and the RV diastolic pressure may remain unchanged as the increase in venous return, or may actually fall because of the transmission of the negative intrapleural pressure. Here normally the right ventricular diastolic pressure remains unchanged. In valvular pulmonary stenosis, because the right ventricular is hypertrophied, the right ventricular diastolic pressure tends to rise with the increase in venous return, whereas the pulmonary artery diastolic pressure falls. This induces a premature opening of the pulmonary valve before the onset of systole due to the elevation of the right ventricular diastolic pressure that exceeds the pulmonary artery diastolic pressure. This premature opening of the pulmonary valve decreases the intensity of the ejection click in inspiration. Here we can clearly see there is a elevated pulmonary artery pressure in expiration, whereas in inspiration the pulmonary artery diastolic pressure is lesser when compared to that of the expiration, and the crossover of pressure occurs earlier. And again here in expiration we can see there is an increase in the pulmonary artery diastolic pressure. This is the mechanism of variable ejection click.
Sandeep, can you please explain it again?
No, in inspiration, the end expiratory pressure falls. That's why you have that RV end diastole falls.
Normally, both in inspiration and expiration, there will be a fall in the pulmonary artery pressures. In inspiration, there is a fall in the pulmonary artery pressures. In patients with moderate to severe pulmonary stenosis, because of obstruction, there is a rise in the pulmonary right ventricular diastolic pressure. Hence, the crossover occurs earlier. That's why there is because of the premature opening of the pulmonary valve.
No, here even the diagram shows that inspiration, the gradient is very minimal. See RV and PA. Whereas here it is increasing. That's why you have better rating of the click. See that tracing says that here it's almost both are equalized in end diastole, whereas here they're separated. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Put the arrows also, no?
Yes, sir.
See, because in inspiration, expiration, the end, same thing, inspiration, the pressures fall, but in expiration, pressures rise. So they are little more rise than compared to usual. So that's why you have the audit. See, this is a classical hemodynamic explanation. Previously, 30-40 years back, Leatham, all of them, they wrote the other explanation they gave is, see, in expiration, the lingular lobe, everything separate out from the cardiac structures, so you hear better. And when inspiration, the lung will overlap over the heart, and that was the original concept they gave. But once this hemodynamic concept came, so normally this is accepted. But sometimes some people may ask, what is the other theory? Then you have to say that, so in expiration, the lung is unexpanded and lingular lobe comes over the precardium. So you may not be able to hear the faint click like that. Whereas in inspiration, they are separated out. So you have clearly this one. Huh? No, that was now nobody there. Now the classical one is this hemodynamic explanation. Okay, Sandeep.
Difference between the aortic and the pulmonary ejection click are aortic click
So
is
normally
better heard
this
in the
way
aortic area.
they call them as constant and inconstant, because constant means present both in inspiration and expiration. Inconstant means they are heard better in expiration. Sometimes you may hear faintly, that's different, but they're better heard in expiration. That's why they're called inconstant clicks.
Aortic click is widely audible, whereas pulmonary click is localized to the pulmonary area, and the aortic click is constant, whereas pulmonary click is variable with better heard during expiration. And the accompanying features such as LVH, slow rising carotid pulse, systolic thrill at aortic area or neck, reverse split, diminished or absent A2 supports aortic click, whereas the presence of RVH, prominent A wave in JVP, systolic thrill at pulmonary area, and wide split S2 with diminished P2 supports pulmonary click. Vascular click arises because of the sudden distension of the vessel beyond
is
the
there,
wall,
huh?
along with the
Pranay? Is not there, huh? Huh? Sandeep is not there?
I'm seeing
No, sir,
it's not there.
not there, sir.
It is meant
It's
for
not
him
there.
only. No? Okay.
It occurs because of the sudden distension of the vessel beyond the wall, along with the opening movement of the wall. And the difference between the vascular and the valvular click is S2 intensity is loud in vascular click, whereas it is diminished or normal in valvular click. And the S2 split is normal or close split or single S2 in vascular click, whereas in valvular click, it is abnormally split wide or reverse. And the pulmonary palpable pulmonary artery beyond wall is seen in vascular, whereas the valvular click it is impalpable. Causes of the aortic vascular click are systemic hypertension because of the increased pressure beyond the wall, and in aneurysm of ascending aorta, it occurs because of the dilatation of the vessel beyond the wall. In aortic regurgitation, anemia, and thyrotoxicosis, aortic vascular click occurs because of the increased flow across the aortic wall. And in the cause of pulmonary vascular click or the pulmonary artery stenosis, it occurs because of the increased pressure beyond the pulmonary wall. And left to right shunt anemia and thyrotoxicosis, it occurs because of the increased flow across the pulmonary wall. And in idiopathic dilatation of the pulmonary artery, the pulmonary vascular click occurs because of the dilatation of the vessel beyond the wall.
So yeah, the
Non-ejection click
main
are
thing
the
is you have to know that minimum where what is constant, inconstant in what means. In the general term, inconstant means heard better in expiration than inspiration. That's a pulmonary click. And a constant click is an aortic click which is heard both in inspiration and heard expiration. And somebody then asks what is the hemodynamic expression, they have to tell like that. Otherwise, that is enough. And many times we don't go further. Sometimes you ask, what is the explanation why this is inconstant, that is constant. And vascular clicks are all constant only. Whether aortic or pulmonary, whatever, they're all constant only. Because the increased pulmonary arterial diastolic pressure or aortic diastolic pressure and also dilatation of the aorta or the vessel, distal to the valve, whenever the valve is, vessel is dilated, then you will have a constant click. Something that's what in a patient as the primary pH develops, you will have a vascular click. Though it's a pulmonary, it is a constant click because it's a vascular one. Okay.
non-ejection clicks are the systolic sounds occurring at the atrioventricular walls in prolapse of the mitral or tricuspid valves due to myxomatous degeneration of the valve. In a normal mitral valve and left ventricle, the mitral valve fits into the left ventricle like a cone. This conical shape of the mitral valve, it has a mechanical advantage as the force of ventricular contraction is mostly expended on the outflow rather than the inflow tract. Whereas with a flat curtain-like closure of the mitral valve or prolapse, the valve faces this brunt of the left ventricular pressure. The clicks can be single multiple, persistent, or intermittent. They are best heard at the apex, and since they are high frequency sounds, they are better heard with the diaphragm of the stethoscope. If loud, they can be heard in other areas also. The timing of the non-ejection click coincides with the maximum prolapse of the mitral valve into the left atrium. And the determinants of the first heart sound to non-ejection click interval depends on the left ventricular end-diastolic volume and the rate of the left ventricular ejection. Based on the degree of the abnormality of the valve, the prolapse occurs at a particular end-diastolic volume of the ventricle, which is called as the click volume. And the click volume for an individual patient is constant unless the lesion progresses. And all the maneuvers that decrease the ventricular end-diastolic volume increases the prolapse and the click occurs earlier and louder. Whereas the maneuvers that increase the volume of the ventricle reduces the degree of prolapse and the click occurs later and reduces in intensity or disappears. Normally, the mechanism is the caudate tendinate prevents the leaflet from prolapsing into the atrium because of the tensing movement due to the contraction of the papillary muscle. When the chordae are long and redundant, as seen in myxomatous valves, or the papillary muscle function is impaired, the leaflets lose their support and prolapse into the atrium. And as the chordae are stretched with increase in the ventricular size, the amount of prolapse decreases. And similarly, when the ventricular volume decreases, the chordae are not stretched and the amount of prolapse increases. These are the maneuvers that decrease the ventricular volume: standing, phase 2 of Valsalva phase, squatting, nitroglycerin or amyl nitrate. All these results in earlier and louder non-ejection click. Here we can see that the non-ejection click is louder and occurs earlier. Whereas here we can see there is an increased prolapse and increased in the intensity of the left atrium. Whereas the maneuvers that increase the left ventricular volume are supine posture, expiration, phase 4 of Valsalva maneuver, phenylephrine, prompt squatting and bradycardia. Here we can see that the non-ejection click is delayed and it is somewhat less in intensity when compared to that of the above maneuver. Here you can see that there is a lesser degree of prolapse of the mitral valve into the left atrium.
See, that's why I made it a habit since 40 years. All patients, without making them stand up, you have to auscultate in standing posture. Because many times young female come with chest pain, this is normal, nothing. But if you make them stand up and auscultate, you may hear a click. Then you know that a mild prolapse is there, which is causing this annoying pain like that. So you should make it a habit. All patient, after the patient is lying down, you ask them to come down on the bed, make them stand and auscultate. Then easily you will make out this. See, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, mitral prolapse, you will miss if you have not auscultated in the standing posture. See, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, sometimes you have murmur. Here also mitral prolapse, only click is there, mild prolapse, you can't have anything. If the MR is there, okay, suspect. But otherwise, so we have to make a habit to auscultate on the standing posture. You may not do Valsalva, all those things, minimum standing posture. Okay.
The opening of the normally thin atrioventricular valve is noiseless, whereas the opening of the mitral and tricuspid valve is associated with clicking noises in the stenosis of their respective valves. This clicking noise is referred to as opening snap. In mitral stenosis, the leaflets are thickened and open with a doming motion, and the left atrial pressures are high at the onset of diastole, and this results in an abrupt opening of the valve when the left atrial pressure exceeds that of the ventricular pressure, and this results in a classical opening snap. A calcified wall doesn't result in opening sound since the opening excursion is markedly limited in a calcified wall. And the hemodynamic mechanisms responsible for opening snap are thickened leaflets and high pressure in the left atrium and the doming of the stenotic wall into the left ventricle. The time at which the opening snap occurs, it's a function of the left atrial pressure. The left atrial pressure is higher with increasing severity of the mitral stenosis. Hence, the crossover point of pressure, that is the point where the left atrial pressure exceeds the left ventricular pressure, occurs earlier and thus closer to the second heart sound A2. Thus, the A2 OS interval has an inverse relation with the severity of the mitral stenosis in most of the situations. This is a diagram clearly depicting that various degree of severity of the mitral stenosis. This is the mild mitral stenosis. Here we can see that there is a long distance between the second heart sound and the opening snap. With the increasing severity of the mitral stenosis, the distance between the time duration between the second heart sound and the opening snap decreased. Normally, in case of mild mitral stenosis, the S2 OS interval is considered to be around 0.12 seconds, and it corresponds to a left atrial pressure of 15 mmHg and a mitral valve area of 1.5 to 2.5 centimeters square. In moderate mitral stenosis with a heart rate of about 70 to 90 per minute, the S2 OS interval should be around 0.08 seconds, which corresponds to a pressure of 20 mmHg with a valve area of 1 to 1.5 centimeters square. And in severe mitral stenosis, the S2 OS interval is around 40 milliseconds, which corresponds to a pressure of 25 mmHg and a valve area of less than 1 centimeter square. And there are conditions where the second heart sound and the opening snap interval is unreliable. The second heart sound and the opening snap interval is shortened in case of tachycardia because of the abbreviation of diastole, and in aortic stenosis because of the delayed closure of the aortic valve. Whereas the duration between the second heart sound and the opening snap is widened in case of bradycardia because of the prolongation of the diastole, and in hypertension and aortic regurgitation because of the early closure of the aortic valve, and in low cardiac output states such as severe right ventricular failure, severe TR and severe PH because of low left atrial pressure, and in patients with increased left ventricular end-diastolic pressure because of coronary artery disease, cardiomyopathy with systolic or diastolic dysfunction, it occurs because of the obliteration of the transmitral gradient. The opening snap is virtually pathognomonic of mitral stenosis. An audible opening snap distinguishes mitral stenosis from other conditions simulating it. A narrow S2 OS interval always indicates tight mitral stenosis, whereas when the S2 OS interval is wide, tight mitral stenosis is not ruled out. We should exclude the conditions that can result in widening of S2 OS interval.
Just to see opening snap A2S interval, but many times, as you have seen, I've shown many patients, you can better appreciate after balloon valvotomy. You have seen many times it hurts very clearly, just like a split second heart sound, wide area like that. So in that way, because the mitral stenosis is relieved or very mild, so if somebody want to demonstrate, you have to opening snap, you have to make the patient, people auscultate, people have been valve dilatation is done like that. So if the tight stones there, A2 is in slow, very low means probably you are not able to hear the opening snap. If you are unable to hear the opening snap, you are think that either it is a very severe or it is a calcified like that. Huh? Sandeep, what are the other conditions where you can have opening snap?
Tricuspid stenosis,
Oh, okay.
ma-
That mitral stenosis, tricuspid stenosis. Huh?
Epstein's anomalies.
Epstein's, probably rarely, I don't think you'll have. Okay. Sometimes AHD patients also can hear an opening snap like that. There are descriptions of that. So you search for that. What are the other conditions where you can have an opening snap?
Yeah.
And one more question is, you know that A2 interval indicates severity. Whether loudness of the first start sound indicates severity or not in mitral stenosis.
May not be.
Huh?
May not be, sir.
Okay. I say yes. How do you contradict it?
As the severity of increases, there will be restriction of the valvular.
In my calcific mitral stenosis, we get a soft.
Huh?
In calcific mitral stenosis, despite being here, we get.
See, if the valve is pliable, the loudness of the first start sound correlates with the severity. Because the higher left atrial pressure means that's why it's coming with a more loud closure. So, but usually this question will be asked sometimes trickily, whether loudness of the first start sound correlates. You have to say that, sir, if all the other things are ruled out, like calcification and all those things, a normal good valve, pliable valve, a loudness usually correlates. See, loudness of the first sound due to left ventricular contraction, all those things, PR interval. But if you think the cardiac output is good, patient is all right, a loud first start sound also correlates to some extent up. So that adjectives is all added, like calcification is removed or mild regurgitation is removed and the patient is having a very good cardiac output like that. Huh? Normal or near normal cardiac output. So if the patient is in heart failure like that or calcified valve, you don't hear a classical opening snap. Huh?
Okay.
So sometimes I ask this question where people are doing well like that. Otherwise, it's a tough question. Then you have to put in, sir, loudness usually doesn't go with the loudness of the first starts on the mitral stenosis. But if all these adjectives are added, you can say that probably. Okay?
Okay.
Somebody who is doing well, I'll ask this, otherwise I don't ask you. Pericardial.
Shall I discuss now, sir, or later, sir? After.
Last, I think let's sound see our final thing is the pericardial rub.
Okay. This pericardial knock, it is an early, loud, high-pitched diastolic sound that is often associated with constrictive pericarditis. It is actually an third heart sound that occurs earlier than the typical third heart sound. It occurs around 80 to 100 milliseconds after A2. And the pericardial knock usually has a clicking or a snappy quality, best heard along the left sternal border and increases with inspiration. Sometimes this sound may be qualitatively identical to that of the typical third heart sound. That is, it may not have a high pitch or it may not be loud. If the third heart sound is not loud or of low pitch, we should not exclude the diagnosis of the constrictive pericarditis. If there is a high suspicion, even if the S3 appears low pitched and soft, it may be pericardial knock. And it is associated with markedly elevated left and the right atrial and the ventricular diastolic pressures and increased velocity of the diastolic filling, and the ventricular systolic function is usually normal. And the early and the prominent pericardial knock is related to an elevated left atrial pressure and a rapid rise in early ventricular diastolic pressure caused by a non-distensible pericardial shell which encases the heart. And often palpable, the S3 may be the loudest of all the 3 heart sounds in such patients. And in some patients with constrictive pericarditis, this sound is indistinguishable from the typical S3, which I mentioned earlier. This may be because the adhesions are less dense than the usual or because of the coexisting pericardial effusion. And in some patients with restrictive cardiomyopathy and early S3 with distinct high frequency component can simulate a pericardial knock. The tumor plop is the early diastolic sound which is produced when a left or a right atrial myxoma attached to a stalk prolapses through the mitral or tricuspid wall in diastole. This early diastolic sound can occur at a time one would expect either an opening snap or a third heart sound. It also differs from the expected S3 by being more easily heard at the left lower sternal border. And it is a diastolic sound of lower frequency and it is more variable in its presence and intensity. These are the sounds produced by the prosthetic heart valves. In case of ball valves, mitral ball valve prosthesis, the second heart sound to the mitral valve opening interval is around 70 to 110 milliseconds and the mitral valve opening is more prominent than the mitral valve closing. And that's usually associated with a systolic ejection murmur of grade 2 to 3 and not associated with any diastolic murmur. Whereas in aortic prosthesis, the interval between the first heart sound and the aortic valve opening is around 70 milliseconds and the aortic valve opening is more prominent than the aortic valve closure and it is associated with a harsh grade 2 ejection systolic murmur and not associated with any diastolic murmur. In all the ball valve prosthesis, the opening of the valve is more prominent than the closure of the valve. Whereas in tilting disc valves, the A2 mitral valve opening interval is around 50 to 90 milliseconds and the opening is rarely heard and it is usually associated with a grade 2 ejection systolic murmur and grade 1 or 2 diastolic murmur is heard. Whereas the interval between the S1 and the aortic valve opening in aortic valve tilting disc valve is 40 milliseconds and the aortic valve opening is uncommonly heard whereas the aortic valve closure is usually heard and it is associated with a grade 2 ejection systolic murmur. Occasionally there may be a diastolic murmur. Whereas in case of bileaflet mechanical valve, in mitral valve, the mitral valve closure is well heard whereas mitral valve opening is usually not audible and there may be a diastolic rumbling murmur. Whereas in aortic bileaflet prosthetic valve, the aortic valve opening is not well heard whereas the aortic valve closure is prominent and the soft ejection systolic murmur is heard on occasionally and it is usually not associated with any diastolic murmur. Whereas in case of porcine mitral valve, the A2 mitral valve opening interval is around 100 milliseconds and the mitral valve opening is audible in 50% of the cases and grade 1 to 2 apical ejection systolic murmur is heard in 50% and the diastolic rumble is heard in 50 to 67% of the patients. And in patients with porcine aortic valve, the S1 aortic valve opening interval is 30 to 80 milliseconds. The aortic valve opening is uncommonly heard, whereas the aortic valve closure is usually heard. And the second grade 2 ejection systolic murmur is heard in most of the patients and the diastolic murmur is not heard. Typically, we can say that in case of ball valves, the opening is better heard than the closure of the valve, whereas in other valves, the closure of the valve is better heard.
See, we are not using nowadays prosthetic this one, ball valve case, Star Edwards for the prototype. Not using now, most of them are a tilting disc or a bi-leaflet or mono-leaflet like that. So one you have to remember is closing sounds are always louder. That is important. So in the mitral position, that is the first start sound. Yes, first start sound. Aortic position, aortic. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. In mitral valve prosthesis, normally the mitral valve
So
closure.
you remember that prosthetic valves closing sounds are always louder than the opening sound. Opening sound also may be there, but it's difficult to make out all those things. Thin individuals, you may hear that in a metallic valve, but usually that you remember that still a closing sound is aortic valve, pulmonary valve is the say A2, whereas in a mitral valve is the first start sound. Huh?
Yes, sir.
So you have to remember that closing sounds are louder, and except the ball valves, that's enough. You know, murmur everything you know about that.
Yes.
And there will be a faint, systolic murmurs usually present grade 2 or sometimes 3/6 also in a prosthetic valve. But in aortic position, a pulmonary position, but you don't get a regurgitant murmur. Same thing goes with like small, this one, a mild leak can be there, a little or a little obstruction will be there in a mitral position, but not in aortic position like that. See, sometimes Doppler induced minimal leaks can be there, but they're not audible or anything like that. So clear cut, you're able to hear an audible diastolic murmur of aorta means definitely some paraprosthetic probably leak or some something in that. With mitral regurgitation, usually you don't have, but mild systolic murmur or a short diastolic rumble may be there. Okay.
Pericardial rub is a hallmark of the pericardial inflammation, and it is caused by parietal and the visceral surface of the pericardium moving against each other. It is uniphasic, biphasic, or triphasic in timing. The three components when heard are related to the movement of the heart during ventricular systole, atrial systole, and the rapid ventricular filling phase, which corresponds to the third sound time. The most commonly audible component is the one during the ventricular systole, and which is followed by the atrial systolic component, and the least commonly audible is the rapid filling component, which corresponds to the third heart sound time. And the to and fro rub is the most common type of pericardial rub heard, and it occurs due to ventricular systolic and the atrial systolic components. And the three component rub is audible in less than half of the cases. The single component rub is very rare and is more likely in the setting of atrial fibrillation because of lack of atrial contraction or in the resolving stage of pericarditis. It is usually superficial, scratchy, or musical in character, and the rub is best heard over the left sternal border in sitting position, leaning forward with the diaphragm of the stethoscope closely pressed to the chest wall. And respiration has a variable influence on the rub, but is usually better heard in inspiration, and the rub can occasionally be evanescent and be present in one examination and then surprisingly absent after a few hours. Unlike the pleural rub, which is absent in the presence of large pleural effusion, a pericardial rub can be present even with large pericardial effusion and tamponade. Pericardial rub with accompanying features may suggest some diagnosis. If the pericardial rub is associated with fever and chest pain, we can consider acute pericarditis. And when the pericardial rub is heard with in patients with acute MI, we should suspect post-MI pericarditis. In patients with CKD, we should suspect uremic pericarditis. In patients with elevated JVP paradoxes and shock, we should suspect cardiac tamponade. And in patients with acute pericarditis, the presence of pericardial rub indicates rheumatic pancarditis.
So rheumatic pericarditis produce constriction or not?
Rheumatic.
Huh?
No,
What
sir, it
problem?
never produces
Never.
constriction.
Huh?
It never produces constriction.
See, it never produces a periconstriction. That's the only pericarditis. All the other things like inflammatory, infective, drug-induced, radiation-induced, all of them will produce can produce, not all, not necessarily that all, may all of them have potential to produce constriction, except rheumatic fever. Rheumatic fever pericarditis is a self-limiting problem completely. You don't have any sequel at all during the acute, so the constriction, those things will not be there. Even I have not seen a persistent effusion also in a rheumatic fever. Okay?
Okay.
So that's the only pericarditis which not produce constriction.
Pleural rub can also differentiate between primary pericarditis and post-MI pericarditis. If the pleural rub appears along with the beginning of the chest pain, primary pericarditis is a likely cause of chest pain. Whereas if the pericardial rub is heard 1 to 2 days after the onset of chest pain, post-MI pericarditis is likely, as the ECG may fail to show the diagnostic changes or even may show the features shared by both the conditions. Detection of pericardial rub is critical for proper diagnosis and management of these patients.
Okay, good. Any doubts or clarifications? So pericardial rub is a triphasic rub. First one is in the systole. Next, that's why even in a systole you have the very minimal, even 50 to 100 ml collection you see in the systole, that separation, and you have a echo-free space. And the next is the atrial kick, which adds up so the ventricle swells more, so you have a pericardial rub. And the other is during filling phase of the diastole. So how do you differentiate between a pericardial rub and a pleural rub? That was a MD question, now I'm just asking. What Mastan should say.
Sir, pleural rub, mostly it is a peripheral sound, sir, and if we
This is also peripheral only, na? Pericardium is peripheral only.
if we compress the stethoscope, I mean putting pressure over the stethoscope, the sound of the pleural rub will be elevated,
Yeah,
sir. I mean increased.
main thing is the location. Pericardial
Yes,
rub usually in the precardial space.
Yes,
Huh?
yes,
Well,
sir.
pleural rub is more in the sides like either
Infrascapular.
back,
Yes, sir.
axilla, all those things, infraaxial region like that. So the
Yes, sir.
site is important, and the pericardial rub is a little scratchy quality.
Quality.
Whereas a pleural rub is a more of a rub high intensity quality like that. So like that, there are subtle differences there. Usually it will have for a cardiologist, as soon as put over the precardium, you hear think that's a pleural rub only. So pericardial rub only. Rarely, so sometimes to make you trick the mask, then you have to say that they're completely different and everything, and you can easily differentiate by the location and the quality.
Okay, sir.
What more? You're talking something, Raju? Hello?
Sir.
You're talking?
No, sir. No, sir.
Saturday?
Next Wednesday I'm talking, sir.
Oh, case discussion?
Sir, from next week you will have every week case discussion, sir.
Saturday.
Yes, sir.
So the clinical scenarios, you let him be given to the pranay.
Okay, sir.
Minimum alternate week, let him do.
Yes, sir.
You give the clinical summary and findings, then other will discuss and then go for X-ray, ECG, echo, or catheterization, whatever is there like that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Most of the points are covered. There's only brief and nice. So minimum these things only we ask. How do you differentiate inconstant, constant cliques? Why? Or if you like that, sometimes they must ask that what is the hemodynamic explanation for that? That you have to say. RV endoscopic pressure is very high. That's why. So in that way you can tell. But originally that was a simple one, was the logic whether lung is not present or absent like that, covering the heart like that. You know, the many lead them, everything, they still describe those concepts. But after the advent of hemodynamic, they say that is more of a hemodynamic phenomenon, not as a physical phenomenon.